Hello, everyone, and welcome to the first session of our virtual Marine Money China 2020 conference. This time of year, we would normally have been at the Ritz-Carlton Hotel in Shanghai greeting you all, but in times like these, we have little choice but to resume our networking and intelligence sharing online. Before we begin, I would like to take this opportunity to thank all of our prime and corporate sponsors for their support. You can see them in the slide shown on your screen now and throughout the conference today. I am your host, Andrew Oates, and today I have the privilege to introduce to you our speakers for the first session, who will provide some context and insight into the broader Chinese economy and path for decarbonizing shipping in the months and years ahead. Ms. Shen is an economist covering mainland China at Standard Chartered Bank. She provides real-time, value-added analysis of key economic and policy developments in China. Lan provides regular reports on China's economic trends and macroeconomic policies. She also focuses on strategically important areas such as the banking sector, real estate sector, and financial market development. Mr. Steve Saxon is a partner at McKinsey & Company's China office. Steve joined McKinsey in London in 2000 and transferred to Asia in 2005. He is a core member of the travel, logistics, and infrastructure practice, focusing on shipping and ports. His work includes strategy development with container lines, performance improvement through revenue enhancement and cost reduction, and supporting private equity investors into shipping. He has supported several of the recent successful container liner mergers, as well as helped ports in their long-term plans and productivity improvement. Before I give the floor to Ms. Shen, a couple of ground rules. The audience will be on mute during this webinar to ensure quality control. You should have a control panel which pops up on the right of your screen, as shown it now. We encourage you to ask questions throughout the session. To do this, you simply need to enter your question in the box at the bottom of the control panel where it says questions. I will receive them, and at the end of the webinar, I will ask the questions on your behalf. Please note that the questions provided will be on an anonymous basis. You can also collapse the menu by clicking on the little arrow on the top of the control panel. So with that, I will now hand over the floor to Ms. Shen to deliver her presentation titled China Economic Outlook, Recovery in the Bag, Challenges on the Horizon. Ms. Shen.
Thank you, Andrew. Thanks the invitation from Marine Money, and thank you everyone for joining today's conference. I would like to share our macroeconomic view, taking these great opportunities. Okay, next page, please. Next page, please. As we all know that the COVID-19 has a very significant hit on a global economic this year. We forecast that global economy is well likely to contract by 3.8% this year. And among G20 economies, most countries is likely to record GDP contraction this year, except China. China is likely to be the only country in G20 economies that record positive growth this year, mainly due to the policy support and very effective containment of the infections. Next page, please. As we can see that China experienced a V-shaped recovery in Q2, with the GDP growth jumping to 3% in Q2 from a 6.8% contraction in Q1. And the economic recovery steamed ahead in Q3 with GDP growth accelerating to 4.9% in Q3. And we expect the quarterly pace to pick up to 5.5% in Q4, resulting in an annual GDP growth of 2.1% for the whole year of 2020. For next year, we forecast in Q1, we're likely to have a jump in GDP growth, reaching about 80% in Q1 next year, mainly due to favorable base effect, and followed by a gradual slowdown in sequential growth. So next year, we will likely to see everything back normal and the China's GDP growth to return to about 55% of the potential GDP growth levels. And on the right-hand side, we can see that the COVID-inflicted slowdown was largely domestic. If we compare the bar this year compared to that in 2008, we can see that this time the slowdown was mainly concentrated in domestic investment and consumptions. So this means that policy support to boost domestic demand was proved rather effective this time. We can see that the policy-driven investment has led the recovery, and the contribution from investment to the overall GDP turned to positive 5% in Q2, which is very strong, from a negative 1.5% in Q1. And also following that, consumption is catching up in Q3 with consumption's contribution to GDP growth turned positive in Q3 to increase to 1.7% in Q3 from a minus 2.3% in Q2. Next page, please. By sector, we see that most industries turn back to positive growth. Next page, please. Well, the IT and financial sectors are leading the recovery and outperform. We see that accommodation and catering, which was hit most by the COVID-19, also recovered fast in Q2 and Q3. And on the right-hand side, the business sentiment indicators, including both the manufacturing, non-manufacturing PMIs, and as well as our SME surveys, also indicate that the business sentiment remained upbeat, but it shows signs of a flattening of the V-shaped rebound. Therefore, we expect real activities continue to expand, but at a slower pace in the rest of this year. Okay, next page, please. Next slide, please. Yeah, from the heat map, we can also see that the green area is getting larger and larger this year, which means that an improvement on a month-to-month term for various current indicators and also the forward-looking indicators. So following that, we will show the details of several indicators that most important in China. Next page, please. From the production side, industry production growth rose to 5.8% year-on-year in Q3 from 4.4% in Q2. Next page, please. Yes. Yeah, we can see that the IP growth accelerated in Q2 and Q3. We think that former demand helped to sustain the robust production growth. Domestically, we have various policy supports to boost domestic investment and consumption demand. And externally, we see that this year, given the early reopening of China's economy, China's exporters has already replaced some production capacities from other countries. So both domestic and external demand help to sustain the robust production growth in China. We think that the industrial production growth will continue with this acceleration, given that both the industrial sales and also the industrial profits improved throughout this year. Especially the industrial profits growth has accelerated to around 20% in July, which is a record high in recent years. Also, we see that the industrial inventory cycle has turned stocking to restocking, which both well for further productions. Okay, next. We see the production of equipment upstream. Next week, please. Well, policy stimulus played a key role in showing up growth in the first half of this year. We see that recovering consumer confidence, especially on China's effective COVID containment, have added to the growth momentums in the second half. So while industrial sector still led the recovery, the economic recovery has become more broad-based in Q3, as the service sector is quickly catching up, with industry sector in Q3. We see that the service production index has rebounded, and we think that next year we will likely to see the service production index to back to the level above the industrial production index. Okay, next page, please. On the demand side, we see that one encouraging sign is that public investment growth that rebounded strongly on increased government spending and easing credit conditions has already lifted up private investment growth in the later part of this year. And by sector, infrastructure investment, real estate investment, and manufacturing investment are the three major part of China's official investment growth. We see that thanks to a sharp rebound in industrial profit growth, as well as strong demand, manufacturing investment has posted a positive 5% year-on-year growth in August, which is the first positive reading for in this year. And infrastructure investment jumped on government initiatives right after the virus got contained, but it recently is on back of on the lack of viable projects. Real estate investment, on the other hand, stayed resilient and is a main contributor to the official investment growth. However, we think that next year we will likely to see some downside risks on real estate sectors. Next page, please. Several leading indicators, including the land purchase and also the floor space study and floor based under construction, has started to ease in October and September. This, we think, points to a slowdown in real estate investment ahead. Next page, please. On the other hand, tighter financing for property developers has started to weigh on the investment activities. Next page, please. Yeah. So in second half of this year, China's financial regulators introduced new financing management rules to supervise real estate property developers. So the regulators set up 3 red lines for property developers, mainly to avoid intensive borrowing and aggressive leveraging. So we see that banks has already tightened financing to property developers, and the bank's loans contribution to the total source of financing for those developers has already declined. We think that this tightening up of the financing for developers is likely to start to weigh on the investment activities next year. Next page, please. While investment growth is likely to remain resilient and remain a key supporter of growth, we think that the consumption has also recovered. The growth in retail sales of consumer goods rebounded to 3.3% in September from 0.5% in August. On one hand, the pent-up demand boosted domestic tourists, supporting the catering and accommodation sectors. And also the sales of discretionary goods such as cosmetics and jewelry grew rapidly in recent months, mainly due to rising income growth that has already picked up with nominal GDP growth. Auto sales grew about 11% year-on-year in recent months, contributing to about 1% to the total retail sales growth. So we see that the momentum is still there, and given that the income growth has accelerated and the labor market is improving, we are likely to see consumption to be a bigger driver of the economic growth next year. Next page, please. Next page, please. On the external side, China's export growth has accelerated for 5 months in a row for now, mainly driven by improving demand on the reopening of the global economy. And also we think that the resurgence of COVID-19 in some part of the world will likely to support the resilient medical equipment and computer-related exports from China further. Next page, please. The labor market remains stable. As we know that the labor market is a key priority in China. So we see that there are a lot of measures from the government to help to lower the unemployment rate. And so far, the nationwide surveying unemployment rate in urban areas was 5.4%, and it continued to decrease in Q2 and Q3. So far, we see that in the first 3 quarters of this year, nearly 9 million new jobs were created, almost meeting the annual target of this year. This, on the one hand, shows that the labor market has already stabilized, and on the other hand, means that the counter-cyclical policies is likely to gradually phasing out. Next page, please. Next page, please. Okay, so on the policy side, we see that fiscal policy is still the main driver of the economic growth in China this year. China this year increased the board-based fiscal deficit to 10.8% of GDP, according to the budget set at the start of this year. This contrast to actual deficit of 5.6% last year leaves a large room for fiscal stimulus, and the budget amount to fiscal stimulus fiscal stimulus of 5.2% of GDP this year. We think it will likely to include the reductions in government disposable incomes via tax cuts and increased transfers, and also increase government spending on consumptions and investment. So we estimate that all this policy stimulus from fiscal policy side will likely to add to 3.2% of GDP growth this year. And the government will continue to pursue proactive fiscal policy in the second half of this year. According to the Politburo meeting in July, the focus in the second half of this year will be on effectively implementing existing measures and ensuring sufficient fundings for key projects. So we estimate that the approved budget provides room for more expansionary fiscal policy in the second half of this year. If the annual budget deficit of 10.8% of GDP is fully implemented, the second half deficit would amount to about 8 trillion, which is more than double in the second half last year. This will likely to enable the government to cut taxes and ramp up spendings to maintain growth momentum and reduce unemployment. However, we think that the fiscal deficit will likely to be a little bit undershoot the budget this year, which will leave more room for more funding supporting investment and other government spendings next year. Next page, please. Next page, please. On the monetary policy side, we think that China's post-COVID monetary policy easing cycle has ended amid sustained economic recovery and also rising leverage ratios. We see that industry sales is a reliable indicator of the end of the monetary easings, and this time we already see industry sales growth picking up, and the leverage ratio has risen to 276% of GDP this year by Q2, which is increased around 20%. So we think that the rising debt growth is also becoming a more pressing concern. So we now expect the monetary policy easing cycle to conclude it, and we do not expect further interest rate cut or reserve ratio cut in the rest of this year. Next page, please. Next page, please. Okay, on the money market side, we see that the PBOC will continue to maintain reasonably ample liquidity in the market. And in Q4, given that the fiscal spending is likely to accelerate to provide more liquidity in the market, we estimate that the PBOC may only need to net inject around 300 billion yuan of liquidity in Q4 into the market to keep M2 growth at around 10 to 11%. On the market interest rate side, we see that the market rate has already moved back to pre-COVID levels, and we think there's no need for PBOC to further adjust the new policy rate. And the new policy rate, which is the 7-day OMO rate and also the 1-year MLF rate, will likely to become the new anchor of the money market rate. So we expect that the money market rate is likely to stay range bound around the new policy rate. Next page, please. Next page, please. Okay, and on the credit market side, we see that credit growth is likely to peak out in Q3 because we can see that the total social financing growth has already outpaced nominal GDP growth by a large amount this year, given all the monetary stimulus we have this year. So in order to stabilize that ratios, we think that next year, on one hand, we will likely to have higher nominal GDP growth, and on the other hand, we will likely to see a gradual slowdown of credit growth. So PBOC may likely to guide aggregate credit growth to gradually lower to be in line with nominal GDP growth in order to stabilize the overall leverage ratios. On the lending rate, we see that this year the 30 basis point cut on MLF rate and the guidance on lower LPR rates has already resulted in the lending rate falling more than 30 basis points in H1 this year. So, which means that the interest rate transmission is rather effective within the new policy framework. So in the second half of this year, we see the government is still aiming to further lowering the cost of doing business. So the lending rate is likely to further moving lower, though at a slower pace. Next page, please. This year, the government set a goal of lowering corporate financing costs by 1.5 trillion RMB throughout this year. So for now, we can see that the government has already accomplished most of their targets this year by October, and in the following months of this year, we think that the focus will be shifted from cutting policy rate to lowering banks' profits. So we may likely to see more new loans to be benchmarked against the new loan prime rate, and also with a lower premium in order to lower the financing cost to lend to the real economies. Next page, please. Next page, please. On the exchange rate side, we see that the RMB is already on an upward trend and is likely to support it by fundamentals. Recently, China's cross-border capital flows are largely balanced. We think that CNY is likely to strengthen further next year under the condition that there's no material escalation of geopolitical tensions. We see several fundamental factors that will support the RMB. First, China will have growth premium compared to other countries. And also, second, China will have a large interest rate differentials against US dollars and also some other major currencies. This will likely to provide a great support to RMB. Next page, please. On the other hand, China is continuing to opening its financial market and attracting more foreign investors to invest in the domestic equity and bond market. So we think that with RMB and the US dollar interest rate differential widen further, China's RMB access are likely to become more attractive and attract more foreign investment inflows. So this will likely to support RMB exchange rate. We expect that the US dollar RMB is likely to strengthen to about 6.4 to 6.5 in the first half of next year. Okay, next page, please. So this is our short-term outlook for China's economy. We think that next year our GDP growth will likely to continue to normalize to the potential level, and the policy stimulus is likely to gradually normalize with continuous selective support to, for example, SMEs and POEs to help those viable business. And on the medium to long-term perspective, we noticed that the government has recently released a proposal for the 14th five-year plan and the 2035 vision. We see that the proposal did not mention a numerical growth target for the next 15 years, but set the broad objective of becoming a mid-level developed economy by 2035. We did the estimates show that to double GDP in real terms from 2020 to 2035, China will likely to need an average annual growth rate of around 4.8% over the period. So which means that in the next 5 years, we will still likely to have an average GDP growth of 5.5%, enabling China to double GDP in real terms in 15 years, which is still quite good growth momentums for China. And instead of setting a binding quantitative growth target, the proposals also emphasize the quality of growth with a focus on ensuring the quality, efficiency, inclusiveness, sustainability, and security of economic development in an increasingly challenging and uncertain global economic recoveries. So this should set the stage for further structural adjustment and high quality development ahead. So here we listed several key policy objectives proposed in the 14th five-year plans. I think we can focus on the first three categories. So as we know that China's government has proposed to promote the dual circulation strategy, which means to smooth internal circulation and facilitate the dual circulation at home and abroad. So under this strategy, we think China has identified innovation as a core future growth drivers. The latest proposal elevates China's self-reliance in technology to a national strategic pillar in light of China's dependence on imports of key components. So this, in our view, suggests increased state support for the development of strategy cutting-edge fields such as artificial intelligence and also, for example, the life and health science, the integrated circuit, and also like brain science, biological breeding, and aerospace technologies. So increased state support for corporate innovation, talent attraction, and also intellectual property protections will also be provided. And the second point, the industrial modernization is seen playing a key role in upgrading the real economy. The policy support will likely to include to improve the self-reliance of the manufacturing sector, keeping the manufacturing sector's share of the economy basically stable, and promoting and upgrading the industry supply chain. And on the other hand, to advance the development of the modern services industries, such as the healthcare, elderly care, and also promoting the new infrastructure investment growth. And on the third point, to develop a strong domestic market, we think this is the cornerstone of the new development approach. So this will likely to include cultivating new types of consumptions, developing urban and rural consumer markets, and promoting services consumptions in the future, as well as optimizing the supply chain and also to expanding room for the new type of investment and maintaining reasonable growth of investment growth. So we think that this reflects a changing emphasis on the driver of China's economic development to avoid the over-reliance on a global economy facing the growing deglobalization pressure and heightened geopolitical tensions. China is likely to continue to focus on increasing its economic self-reliance. Next page, please. Next page, please. More specifically, on the infrastructure investment side, Standard Chartered did Opportunity 2030 study last year. So this study reveals that there are almost $3 trillion opportunity for the private sector to invest in sustainable development projects to meet the UN Sustainable Development Goals. And among this, China contribute almost $3 trillion private sector sustainable development goals investment opportunities in the emerging market, which is the greatest in the study. We think that there are significant room to improve China's transport infrastructure, which will require an estimated private sector investment of about $2.3 trillion between now and 2030s. And to achieve universal digital adoption goals will require private sector investment of around $500 billion. So with a huge range of ambitions, infrastructure projects underway, and an increasing open attitude to private sector investment, we believe that China offers vast potentials for investors to looking to participate in those projects that will help to realize the sustainable development goals and also to contribute China's sustainable GDP growth. I think I'll conclude it here and pass back to Andrew to see if there are some other questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Shen, for providing us with some context on the broader China economy and how Chinese government policy is leading the economic recovery in China. And of course, the Chinese economy is absolutely crucial for shipping and maritime trade.